He had guarded men through smoke, sirens, and sandstorms. But that night, outside St. Mercy Hospital, the white K-9 could not even guard himself. Rain came down hard over Baltimore, turning the ambulance bay into a silver blur of headlights, wet pavement, and rushing feet. The automatic doors opened and closed with a tired sigh, spilling warm fluorescent light onto the concrete before swallowing it back again. Nurses moved quickly inside. Paramedics rolled stretchers through the entrance. Families prayed under their breath beside vending machines and waiting room chairs. Every few minutes, another set of tires hissed through the puddles, another pair of doors slammed, another urgent voice called for help. But just beyond the reach of the awning, where the light thinned and the rain fell colder, a German shepherd lay curled against the brick wall like a forgotten piece of winter. His coat was white, or it had been once. Now it was soaked flat against his ribs, streaked with gray water and road dust, his fur clinging to him in uneven patches. His ears, once sharp and proud, twitched faintly at every siren. A black leather collar circled his neck, worn smooth by years of service, the metal tag pressed against his throat with each shallow breath. People noticed him only in pieces. A security guard glanced over and frowned. A man under a golf umbrella stepped around him without slowing. A woman carrying flowers looked down, whispered, "Poor thing," then hurried through the doors because grief was waiting for her upstairs. The dog did not bark. He did not chase anyone. He only lifted his head when the ambulance doors opened, watching each uniform, each pair of boots, each moving shadow, as if searching for someone who had promised to come back. Then his head sank again to the concrete. The cold moved through him quietly. Not all at once. Cold never does. It starts in the paws, in the places touching the ground, then climbs with patient hands into the bones. His breathing was slow, uneven, a soft rasp almost hidden beneath the rain. At 2:17 in the morning, Nurse Emily Harper stepped out through the side entrance with a paper cup of coffee she had forgotten to drink. She was 12 hours into a night shift that had stretched her face pale and her eyes tired. Her navy scrubs were wrinkled at the knees. A stethoscope hung around her neck like an old responsibility. The rain smelled of wet asphalt, diesel, and the sharp, clean bite of hospital disinfectant drifting from the open doors behind her. She came outside for air, just 30 seconds of it, just enough to remind herself that the world was larger than trauma rooms and monitor alarms. Then she heard it. Not a bark, not even a whine. A small scrape, claws against concrete. Emily turned toward the sound. At first, she saw only a white shape near the wall, half hidden by the rain and the shadow of a parked ambulance. She took one step closer. The shape moved. Two amber eyes opened, dim but steady, and fixed on her with a kind of exhausted discipline that made her stop breathing for a second. "Hey," she whispered. The dog did not come to her. He only watched. Most strays looked afraid, hungry, wild in the eyes. This one looked trained. Not just trained to sit or stay. Trained to wait. Trained to suffer quietly. Emily crouched several feet away, careful not to startle him. Rain soaked through the knees of her scrubs. "What are you doing out here, sweetheart?" she asked softly. The dog blinked. His tail did not wag, but his right paw shifted, just slightly, as if he wanted to stand and could not remember how. The side door opened behind her, and Daniel Price, the night security guard, leaned out with his radio clipped to his shoulder. "Harper, don't get close to that dog," he said. "Animal control's been called twice tonight. He keeps coming back to the entrance." Emily did not look away from the dog. Twice. First time around midnight. Somebody probably dumped him. Happens more than you think. He said it like a fact, not cruelty, and maybe that made it worse. Emily's jaw tightened. "He's not a stray." Daniel gave a tired sigh. "You don't know that. Look at him." She moved another inch closer. "He's waiting for orders." The dog's ears flicked at the word, barely, but enough. Emily saw it. So did Daniel, though he pretended not to. Hospital policy says no animals inside. "Unless they're service animals with a patient," he said. "And he's not with anybody." Emily reached slowly toward the collar. The dog stiffened, not in threat, but in pain. She stopped, palm open, letting him smell her first. His nose touched her fingers. It was cold. Too cold. Something in her chest folded inward. "Easy," she murmured. "I'm not leaving you out here." The dog lowered his head just enough for her to see the collar clearly. Black leather. Military grade. weathered stitching, a small metal plate dulled by rain. Emily brushed water away with her thumb. The letters appeared one by one beneath the yellow ambulance light. Ghost, USMC K9 unit. Below that was a second line, nearly hidden under mud and age. If found, call SSGT. Isaiah Cole. Emily froze. The rain kept falling. The hospital doors breathed open behind her, then closed again. Somewhere inside, a monitor beeped steadily, the sound of a life being counted second by second. She turned the collar gently and found one more tag tucked beneath it, smaller than the first, scratched at the edges, hanging from a thin loop of steel. For words were engraved there, uneven and worn, as if someone had touched them often. Don't let him die alone. Emily's coffee slipped from her hand and burst against the pavement, brown liquid disappearing into the rain. Ghost lifted his eyes to her, and for the first time, he made a sound. One broken breath. Almost a plea. Almost a name. Emily Harper took a slow breath, the rain dripping from her hair into the collar of her scrubs. She would have turned away, left the dog to whatever fate had brought him here, but the amber eyes fixed on her with a quiet insistence that made her knees bend instinctively. She crouched low, hand hovering just above the damp fur, feeling the heat of a life that had endured more than anyone could see at first glance. Ghost lifted his head slightly, nostrils flaring, sniffing her presence as if to measure whether she would honor the unspoken trust in those 4 words engraved on the hidden tag. The hospital parking lot, slick with puddles reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights from the entrance, seemed to hold its breath, the sound of raindrops on metal awnings blending with the occasional wail of a distant siren and the soft murmur of machines inside carrying the weight of lives in progress. Emily touched the collar, fingertips brushing the worn leather, feeling the imprint of years of service embedded in the material. Ghost did not flinch. He only blinked once and rested his muzzle on the concrete, each shallow breath a silent plea. She whispered softly, voice low and steady. It is all right. You are not alone. The words seemed to pass through the rain itself, carrying across the small distance to the dog that had stood outside for hours, maybe longer. Emily scanned the lot for something, anything, to give him shelter. Her eyes fell on a supply cart left unattended near the emergency doors. Its plastic tarp offered minimal cover, but better than the unyielding rain. She knelt and shifted it, creating a small pocket of protection, then gestured gently toward Ghost. He hesitated, ears flicking, muscles tense beneath the soaking coat, then cautiously moved, paws splashing in shallow puddles, tail tucked, but eyes never leaving hers. She stayed with him, murmuring quietly, coaxing him under the tarp. Each step was measured, careful, almost ritualistic, a dance of trust and patience. Emily could see the faint rise and fall of his chest, the subtle twitch of ears as he oriented himself to the sounds around them. The rain slowed to a drizzle, but the chill remained, cutting through the scrubs and damp fur alike. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out a small towel, folded and damp, but usable. She laid it on the plastic surface for him, and Ghost nudged it with his nose, then lay down, head resting on the fabric as if it were a pillow shaped from human compassion. Hours might have passed, though time felt suspended. The distant hum of the hospital continued, the occasional intercom announcement echoing across the wet asphalt. Emily crouched beside him, hand on his back, feeling the pulse of life that had fought to continue despite abandonment and cold. Her thoughts wandered briefly to the number on the tag, the name she had dialed moments ago, and the man on the other end who had not known whether he would ever see his partner again. She imagined the reunion that might follow, the weight lifted from both Marine and dog, though she had no certainty yet. All she knew was the warmth of living trust beneath her palm, the slight shiver that was more from exhaustion than fear, and the silent promise between them that this night would not claim him. Ghost lifted his head once more, amber eyes catching the faint glow of the streetlight, reflecting in a way that seemed almost human, alert, aware, and waiting. Emily adjusted the towel beneath him, brushing rainwater from his muzzle, murmuring again, "We will get you through this." No sound came from the dog beyond the quiet shifting of paws and the occasional soft inhale, but the eyes held a depth of understanding, a connection forged in moments of calm amid chaos. The night stretched on. Rain continued its gentle rhythm, punctuated by distant traffic and the hum of life inside the hospital walls. Emily remained, an unspoken guardian, speaking in whispers and presence rather than commands, letting Ghost know that he had been found, that the world had not completely turned away. She thought of the story behind the name on the collar, the man who might appear at any moment, and the life the dog had lived in service and loyalty. There was anticipation in the air, a quiet tension that held the promise of reunion, the miracle of survival, the small triumph of being seen and honored. Ghost shifted slightly, paws folding beneath him, tail curling, ears alert. Emily rubbed gently along the spine, feeling the taut muscles relax, the breath evening out, each inhale a testament to endurance. Somewhere in the distance, the first faint signs of dawn began to lighten the edge of the city skyline, muted and soft, and Emily realized that this night, heavy and soaked, would not end with abandonment. It would end with care, vigilance, and the slow return of trust, the kind of trust that could span the distance between a Marine and his loyal K9, between life left in uncertainty and life reclaimed through the quiet persistence of human kindness. The first call did not go through. Emily knew at the moment the line clicked and gave her nothing but a thin mechanical silence, followed by a recorded voice telling her the number could not be reached. She lowered the phone slowly, rainwater sliding down the screen, blurring the contact she had typed from Ghost's collar. For a few seconds, she simply stared at the name, Staff Sergeant Isaiah Cole, as if the letters might explain why a United States Marine Corps K9 had been left shivering outside a hospital at 2 in the morning with no handler, no transport, and no one looking for him. Behind her, Daniel Price shifted under the awning, his radio crackling against the steady rain. "Harper, Animal Control said they can send someone after 6, he said, not unkindly, but tired in the way people get when the night has asked too much of them. Emily looked down at Ghost. The white German shepherd had settled under the makeshift tarp, but his eyes stayed open, fixed on the ambulance entrance with that disciplined stillness that made him seem less like a lost animal and more like a soldier refusing to leave his post. His chest rose, paused, then fell. Too slowly. Too shallow. "He does not have until 6, Emily said. Daniel rubbed one hand over his face. "You know I cannot bring him inside." "Then do not," she answered. "I will." He stepped in front of her before she could move. "Emily." His voice dropped. "You are risking your job." She looked past him, through the glass doors, into the bright interior of St. Mercy Hospital, where warmth spilled over polished floors, and every wall carried signs about compassion, dignity, and care. Then she looked back at the dog on the wet concrete. Maybe that is exactly what a job like this is supposed to risk. Daniel had no answer for that. Emily peeled off her scrub jacket and wrapped it around Ghost's shoulders. The fabric darkened instantly with rain, but the dog leaned into it, just enough for her to feel the tremor beneath his fur. She slid one arm carefully under his chest and the other behind his ribs. He was heavier than he looked, close to 80 pounds, but far too thin for his frame. When she lifted, Ghost made no protest. He only pressed his damp muzzle against her collarbone, and that small. Surrender struck her harder than any cry could have. Daniel cursed softly under his breath, then hurried to help, holding the door open as Emily guided Ghost inside through the side entrance. The change was immediate. Heat, light, the sharp scent of antiseptic, the rubber squeak of shoes across tile, a patient transport cart rattling somewhere down the hall. Ghost's ears twitched at every sound, but he did not panic. He scanned the corridor with weary precision, then placed one paw forward, then another, following Emily as if she had been assigned to him. "Storage room 3, Daniel muttered. "No cameras inside. 10 minutes. "Thank you," Emily whispered. "I did not say this was smart. I did not ask if it was." The room was narrow and windowless, stacked with folded blankets, extra gowns, sealed boxes of gloves, and emergency linens. Emily spread 2 blankets on the floor and coaxed Ghost onto them. Under the fluorescent light, his condition looked worse. His white fur had yellowed near the paws from rainwater and road grime. The pads of his feet were rough and tender. There were old pressure marks beneath the collar, not fresh, but familiar, as if he had worn responsibility longer than comfort. Emily fetched warm towels from the warmer and laid them over him one by one. Ghost exhaled, a long breath that seemed to leave years behind it. Then he did something that made Daniel stop at the door. He lifted his head toward Emily's phone, still in her hand, and gave one faint sound. Not a bark, not a whine, a command broken by exhaustion. Emily looked at the phone again. "You know that name, do you not?" she whispered. Ghost's eyes did not leave hers. Emily tried the number a second time. Nothing. A third. Nothing. Then she searched the hospital veteran contact database, the old outreach system used for emergency family notifications, benefits coordination, and identity confirmation. Staff Sergeant Isaiah Cole appeared after several attempts, but the record made the room feel colder. Status: inactive. Last known service connection: United States Marine Corps. Emergency contact: unavailable. Case note: presumed deceased after Kandahar convoy incident. Later. Unresolved. Emily stared at the words. Presumed deceased. Unresolved. Her stomach tightened. Daniel leaned closer. That cannot be right. The number is still listed, Emily said. Her thumb hovered over it again. And Ghost came here wearing his name. She pressed call. The line rang once. Twice. 3 times. On the 4th ring, a sound came through, not voicemail, not a recording, but breathing. Low. Human. Awake. Emily straightened. Hello? My name is Emily Harper. I am a nurse at St. Mercy Hospital in Baltimore. I found a white German Shepherd K9 outside our emergency entrance. His collar has your name on it. Silence. Not empty silence. The kind that carries impact. On the floor, Ghost lifted his head higher. His ears moved forward. Emily heard something on the other end. A small crash, maybe a cup falling, maybe a chair pushed back too fast. Then a man's voice came through, deep and rough, as if it had not been used for anything gentle in a long time. Say his name. Emily swallowed. Ghost. The line went still again. Ghost's tail moved once beneath the blanket. One slow thump against the floor. The man on the phone took a breath that broke halfway through. When he spoke again, the words were barely above a whisper. Where is he? Isaiah Cole arrived at the side entrance of St. Mercy Hospital with his hood pulled over his head, water streaming down the shoulders of his sweatshirt, boots making soft splashes against the wet asphalt. Each step carried the weight of 3 years of unanswered questions, of nights spent wondering if Ghost had survived, of days filled with a quiet ache that could not be explained to anyone outside the Corps. As he pushed open the side door, the warmth of the hospital rushed toward him, carrying antiseptic, coffee, and the faint metallic tang of freshly laundered linens. Ghost lifted his head at the sound, ears flicking forward, eyes brightening ever so slightly in recognition, and for a moment, Isaiah stopped breathing. The room smelled of wet fur and cleaner, a strange mix that reminded him of barracks, of early morning drills, of the feel of a partner who knew his every command without words. Emily Harper stepped back, giving the dog space, her eyes fixed on Isaiah as he approached the blankets laid out on the floor. Is he all right? Isaiah asked, voice low, hoarse from the cold and the tension. Ghost stood slowly, muscles taut beneath the soaked fur, tail tucked slightly, but moving in a hesitant wag, each movement precise, deliberate, a language of trust and memory. Isaiah knelt, hand extended, letting Ghost sniff, letting him measure that the person who had been gone, who had not returned, was real, was present, was safe. Ghost pressed his muzzle into Isaiah's palm, breathing shallow but steady, and Isaiah felt a tremor, a shiver, that was not from the chill in the room but from the enormity of the reunion. Emily watched quietly, the rain still dripping from her hair and scrubs, as Isaiah traced a hand along Ghost's back, over the damp fur, feeling the tension slowly release. You waited, he whispered, almost to himself, almost to Ghost. The dog leaned closer, the movement slight but unmistakable, placing a paw on Isaiah's knee as if to anchor him to the moment. Isaiah's eyes scanned the room, taking in the fluorescent lights above, the stacked boxes, the empty carts, and the blankets beneath them, yet he saw only Ghost. Every scar, every matted patch of fur, every detail of the collar pressed into him like a history written in leather and metal. Emily cleared her throat softly. He is dehydrated, a little chilled, but nothing serious. I can get some warm fluids, blankets, and food if you want to stay with him. Isaiah nodded, his fingers still running along the curve of Ghost's neck, feeling the pulse of loyalty and life beneath the wet fur. "Do not let anyone take him," he said simply. Emily inclined her head. Isaiah helped Ghost settle onto the blankets, moving slowly, carefully, letting the dog position himself comfortably. He watched every twitch of muscle, every ear flick, every tentative glance toward the door as if measuring whether the world still held danger. For the first time in years, Isaiah felt a calm settle in the pit of his chest, a quiet assurance that came from knowing that Ghost was alive, that Ghost had found his way, and that somehow, through the rain, through the cold, through the absence of hope, they had found each other again. Emily brought warm water in a small bowl, placed it near Ghost's head. He sniffed, lapped slowly, and Isaiah's hand rested over his shoulder, steadying him. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, puddles reflecting the hospital lights like liquid mirrors, and Isaiah could see the first hints of dawn brushing the horizon. Ghost shifted, resting his head on Isaiah's knee now, eyes closing for a fraction of a moment, trusting that this was his place. This was the moment. This was the safety he had been waiting for. Isaiah whispered again, softly, "You are home." The words carried through the room, blending with the hum of hospital machines, the distant beeping of monitors, and the faint rustle of carts. And for the first time, Isaiah allowed himself to breathe fully, to feel the weight of years lift slightly, to sense the quiet miracle of survival and reunion, of loyalty returned, of presence acknowledged. Ghost exhaled a long, soft breath, settling more fully onto the blankets, ears twitching at the sounds but confident now, and Isaiah stayed there, hand resting lightly on the dog's shoulder, witnessing the subtle grace of being found, of not being abandoned, of finally being seen. Isaiah did not ask for a chair, but Emily brought one anyway. She placed it beside the blankets and watched him lower himself slowly, as if his own body had forgotten what rest was supposed to feel like. Ghost stayed close, his white head pressed against Isaiah's boot, one paw laid over the edge of the man's sneaker like a quiet claim. The storage room had become a small sanctuary beneath humming fluorescent lights, hidden from the rushing halls of St. Mercy Hospital by one thin door and the mercy of a tired security guard. Outside, carts rolled past. Voices rose and faded. Somewhere, a child cried and was comforted. Somewhere else, an elevator chimed. But in that narrow room, time bent around a Marine and the K-9 who had found him again. Emily returned with a clean towel, a bowl of warm water, and 2 small packets of plain turkey from the staff refrigerator. "It is not official hospital food for dogs," she said gently, "but it is safe enough for now." Isaiah looked up at her, his dark brown eyes shadowed by exhaustion and something older than sleep. "Thank you." Ghost sniffed the turkey, then looked to Isaiah first, waiting. Emily noticed it. So did Isaiah. That small pause opened something in him. "Go ahead," he whispered. "Eat." Ghost obeyed, slow and careful, taking each piece like his strength had to ask permission to return. Emily crouched near the collar again, studying the stitching under the light. "May I check this more closely?" Isaiah's hand tightened on Ghost's shoulder before he answered. "Why? There is a seam here. It looks like someone opened it and stitched it back by hand." Isaiah leaned forward. Rainwater still clung to his sleeves. That collar was issued with him. Standard working gear. "I never saw a seam like that." Emily did not pull at it. She only turned the leather gently, parting the damp fur beneath the buckle. Ghost stayed still, but his ears lifted, not in fear, more like recognition. There, tucked under the inner band, was a narrow strip of black thread, rougher than the rest, almost invisible unless the light caught it right. Daniel appeared at the door and looked in. "You have about 5 minutes before the charge nurse does rounds." Emily did not look up. "Then stand there and be useful." Daniel sighed, but he stayed. Isaiah watched as Emily used a pair of blunt medical scissors from a supply tray to lift one stitch at a time. No one spoke. The room filled with small sounds, the snip of thread, Ghost's breathing, rain tapping faintly against a vent somewhere beyond the wall. When the seam finally loosened, a folded piece of waterproof fabric slid into Emily's palm. It was no bigger than a stick of gum, sealed with clear tape gone cloudy at the edges. Isaiah's face changed before she opened it. He knew, not what it was, but that whatever waited inside had been waiting years. Emily unfolded it carefully. A broken half of a dog tag slipped out first, dull silver, worn smooth at one corner. Isaiah reached for it with a hand that had carried rifles, flags, and folded letters, but now trembled over a piece of metal smaller than his thumb. His voice came out almost soundless. "That is Marcus Reed's tag." Emily looked at him. Who was Marcus? Isaiah closed his fingers around the broken tag, and Ghost lifted his head at the name. "My best friend," Isaiah said. "My spotter." Ghost loved him almost as much as he loved me. He swallowed, the muscle in his jaw shifting. Last mission before everything went wrong. Emily unfolded the fabric the rest of the way. There was writing inside. Faded. Pressed hard into the material with black, permanent marker. Not many words. Enough to stop the room. "Cole, if Ghost finds his way home, forgive yourself." Isaiah stared at the message. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed softly at something ordinary, and the sound felt impossible in a world where one sentence could reopen 3 years of silence. Ghost pushed himself upright with effort and pressed his nose against Isaiah's closed fist, where the broken tag rested. Isaiah bowed his head. No tears came at first, only breath. One hard breath after another, like a man surfacing from deep water. "I was supposed to bring them both back," he said. Emily did not interrupt him. Daniel looked away. "After Kandahar, they told me the convoy records were destroyed, that Ghost was missing, presumed lost. They said there was nothing to recover, nothing to search for. I signed papers I do not remember signing. I came home with half a memory and a full measure of blame." Ghost leaned harder against him, and Isaiah rested his forehead against the dog's damp fur. "But Marcus knew," he whispered. "He knew Ghost might live. He knew I would think I failed him." Emily held the strip of fabric as if it were something sacred. "Then Ghost was not only trying to find help," she said. "He was carrying a message." Isaiah closed his eyes. For a moment, the Marine was not broad-shouldered, not disciplined, not made of command and endurance. He was simply a man in a hospital storage room before dawn, holding proof that someone had loved him enough to leave forgiveness hidden in a dog's collar. Ghost gave a faint, tired sigh and placed one paw on Isaiah's knee. Isaiah covered it with his hand. "I hear you, boy," he said, voice breaking softly. "I hear you now." The message stayed between them like a small flame no one dared touch. Isaiah kept Marcus Reed's broken dog tag closed in his palm while Ghost rested against his knee, the white K9 breathing a little easier now beneath the warm towels. Emily could see the man trying to gather himself back into the shape the world expected from a Marine, shoulders straight, jaw set, eyes clear enough to keep moving. But there are some wounds discipline cannot hide. They do not shout. They sit quietly behind the ribs and wait for a name, a memory, or a line of handwriting to call them forward. Daniel stepped into the hallway, checking both directions, then glanced back. "Rounds are starting. If somebody finds him here, I cannot explain this." Emily stood. "Then we stop hiding him." Isaiah looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means Ghost needs care, not secrecy." She pulled her phone from her pocket and scrolled fast. "There is a veterinary clinic 6 blocks away. They have an emergency agreement with the hospital for service animals brought in during disasters. I know the doctor on call." Daniel frowned. "That agreement is for active patients." Emily looked at Ghost. "He is one." 10 minutes later, with Daniel clearing a path through the service corridor and Emily walking beside him, Isaiah carried Ghost wrapped in 2 hospital blankets out through the rear loading entrance. The rain had softened to a cold mist, and Baltimore's early morning streets glowed under amber lamps, slick and empty except for delivery trucks and the slow blue hush before dawn. Ghost's head rested against Isaiah's chest. Every few breaths, he opened his eyes, checked the man's face, then closed them again, as if confirming this was not a dream he would lose when he woke. The veterinary clinic sat between a closed pharmacy and a laundromat, its green sign buzzing faintly above the door. Dr. Nathan Brooks arrived in jeans, a winter coat, and untied sneakers, his gray hair still damp from a rushed shower. He did not ask many questions at first. Good doctors rarely do when a life is waiting on the table. He opened the door, turned on the lights, and guided them into a clean examination room that smelled of alcohol wipes, dry kibble, and old coffee. "Lay him here," Dr. Brooks said. Isaiah placed Ghost on the padded table with the care of setting down something holy. Ghost tried to stand as soon as the doctor approached, weak legs bracing, ears rising with old training. Isaiah leaned close. "Stand down, Ghost." The command was soft. The dog obeyed at once, though his eyes stayed fixed on every movement. Dr. Brooks paused, impressed despite the hour. Military working dog. United States Marine Corps K9, Isaiah said. Retired, I thought. Missing, they told me. The doctor's hands moved gently over Ghost's body, checking gums, paws, joints, temperature, and heartbeat. No drama crossed his face, but Emily had spent enough years reading medical rooms to notice the quiet concern in the way his brow tightened. He is dehydrated, Dr. Brooks said. Cold stress. Exhaustion. Some old irritation around the collar line. Nothing that looks recent or severe, thank God. Isaiah closed his eyes for half a second. Can he recover? If he gets warmth, fluids, rest, and someone who knows how to keep him calm, yes. But there is something else. The doctor lifted Ghost's front paw and showed them a small adhesive label stuck partly beneath the fur, almost washed away by the rain. It was not a wound. It was paperwork made physical. A temporary transfer tag, the kind used by contracted transport services. Emily leaned in and read the printed letters. Harbor Ridge Canine Logistics. Property intake. No claimant confirmed. Isaiah's face went still in a way that made the room colder. No claimant, he repeated. Dr. Brooks used tweezers to ease the label free and placed it in a clear evidence bag from his cabinet. That is not a shelter tag. That is a private handling tag. Emily felt the truth approaching before anyone said it. Could they have had him in holding? Yes, Dr. Brooks said. And if his handler was listed as deceased or unreachable, he could have been moved through records instead of people. It happens when agencies outsource too much and care too little. Isaiah stared down at Ghost. The dog, sensing the shift in him, nudged his hand. Not hard, just enough. They did not look for me, Isaiah said. And they did not look at him. Emily thought of the bright hospital doors, the slogans on the walls, the way people had stepped around Ghost because suffering is easier to ignore when it does not use words. Dr. Brooks connected a line for warm fluids and covered Ghost with a heated blanket. He found his way to St. Mercy for a reason, he said quietly. Dogs like him do not wander at random. They follow scent, memory, habit, hope. Sometimes all four. Isaiah sank into the chair beside the exam table. Marcus Reed's message folded safely in his pocket now, the broken dog tag resting beside it. Outside the clinic window, the rain finally stopped. The sky over Baltimore was not bright yet, but the dark had loosened. Ghost's breathing steadied under the blanket. The drip of fluids marked time in patient drops. Emily stood near the wall, arms folded, feeling the night settle into something larger than a rescue. It was a record reopening, a promise returning, a forgotten K9 carrying proof that neither he nor Isaiah had been lost beyond reach. Isaiah placed his hand lightly over Ghost's paw and whispered, "They wrote us both off, did they not, boy?" Ghost opened one amber eye, tired but present, and pressed his paw down against Isaiah's fingers. Isaiah nodded once, and something in his voice changed from grief to resolve. Then we are going to correct the record. Isaiah stood in the examination room, the soft hum of machines and the distant chatter of morning staff filling the space, and watched as Ghost rested under the warm blankets, amber eyes half-lidded but alert, each breath steady and measured. Emily Harper had stepped back to give them both room, her hands folded, watching with a careful patience that understood the weight of history unfolding in quiet gestures. Outside, the early light crept across Baltimore, the wet streets reflecting pale orange from the street lamps as if marking a path forward. Yet inside, time slowed to match the rhythm of the K9 who had waited so long to be found. Isaiah reached down, brushing his fingers along Ghost's soaked fur, feeling the tension in the muscles ease with every passing second, a bond reinforced not by commands but by the recognition of shared endurance. The dog shifted slightly, head resting on Isaiah's boot, and the Marine felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on him again, a mix of relief and reverence that had nothing to do with uniforms or protocol. Emily returned with a small tray of warm water and soft food, setting it gently beside the blankets. Ghost lifted his head at the scent, sniffed once, then looked toward Isaiah before beginning to eat slowly, deliberate, the act of silent communication, confirming trust, confirming survival, confirming the presence of the man who had once been absent. Isaiah spoke softly, voice carrying through the room with a low timbre that seemed to pull the shadows into something safer. "It is all right now. You are safe," he said, and Ghost's ears flicked, eyes glinting with awareness. Dr. Nathan Brooks leaned against the counter, arms crossed, observing without interruption, understanding that the reunion and the small miracles happening before him required space, not commentary. Isaiah's gaze wandered across the room, catching the edge of the broken dog tag and the folded message from Marcus Reed, still tucked safely in his pocket, a physical reminder of loyalty, of friendship, of a promise kept through years of uncertainty. Ghost finished eating, licked his lips carefully, then nudged Isaiah's hand with his nose, a gentle insistence that drew the Marine down closer, chest to chest, a quiet alignment of past and present. Emily adjusted the blanket around the dog, careful not to disturb the fragile calm, and for a few moments, they all moved as if in synchronized understanding, a small, shared rhythm that acknowledged the pain of loss, the endurance of hope, and the power of being found. Isaiah whispered again, softer this time, "We will go home together soon." And Ghost pressed his head more fully into Isaiah's leg, ears twitching, body relaxing under the warmth and safety of proximity. The rain had ceased outside, leaving a fresh, clean scent that drifted in through the small vents, carrying with it the distant sounds of the city waking. Isaiah noticed each detail, the way the light caught the dog's wet fur, the soft flicker of reflection in the amber eyes, the subtle rise and fall of the chest under the blankets, and felt the quiet reinforcement of trust, the unspoken agreement that this night would mark a turning point, a reclamation of what had been lost. Emily quietly backed toward the door, giving them silence, and Daniel lingered, leaning lightly against the wall, observing without interfering, understanding that the moments now belonged to the bond, to the history, and to the healing that would follow. Isaiah's hand remained on Ghost's shoulder, palm pressing gently, steadying both himself and the dog, grounding the room in shared recognition. The Marine's mind traced back over the years of separation, the missions, the absences, the uncertainty, and with each thought, the present felt more like grace than coincidence. Ghost lifted his head again, sniffing the air, then leaned back into Isaiah's side, content with the warmth and steadiness, the assurance that no one would leave him unattended again. Isaiah closed his eyes for a moment, letting the soft breathing of the dog under his hand, the faint hum of the clinic, and the quiet persistence of survival settle around him. Outside the window, the sun was beginning to break the horizon, brushing the tops of the wet buildings with muted gold, but inside, the room held a light of its own, the steady heartbeat of trust, the alignment of two lives once separated, and the understanding that together, they would move forward. Isaiah whispered, "Not lost anymore," and Ghost responded with a low, contented exhale, placing one paw gently on the Marine's hand, confirming a bond that had endured absence, rain, and time, and that would now carry them both into the promise of a new day. The calm did not last, but calm rarely does when truth begins to surface. By 7:15 that morning, the clinic had changed from a quiet shelter into a place of careful motion. Dr. Nathan Brooks reviewed Ghost's temperature, hydration, and heart rhythm, while Emily stood near the counter with her hospital badge still clipped to her damp scrub top, answering questions from a supervisor who wanted to know why a St. Mercy blanket had left the building before sunrise. Daniel Price had returned to the hospital, but not before leaving Emily with a paper cup of fresh coffee and a look that said he would pretend not to remember certain details unless somebody forced him to. Isaiah sat beside the exam table, one hand resting over Ghost's paw, the other holding his phone against his ear. For 3 years, he had avoided official numbers. He had let letters pile up unopened. He had allowed old contacts to fade because every voice from the past carried the risk of saying a name he could not bear to hear. But now the past had come in on 4 tired paws, wearing a collar stitched with forgiveness, and Isaiah could not ignore it anymore. The first person he called was Captain Miles Warren, retired now, living somewhere outside Quantico with a bad knee and a memory that still missed nothing. The line rang for nearly a minute before a rough voice answered. "Cole." Isaiah closed his eyes. "Yes, sir." There was a pause, then the sound of someone sitting up too fast. "I heard you were gone." Isaiah looked at Ghost, at the white fur drying in uneven tufts beneath the heated blanket. So did the records. Captain Warren said nothing, and in that silence Isaiah heard the weight of files closed too quickly, reports written by people who had not been there, signatures placed over uncertainties until uncertainty became fact. "I found Ghost," Isaiah said. The words changed the room. Emily turned from her phone. Dr. Brooks stopped writing. Ghost's ears lifted under the blanket. Not fully, just enough to prove he knew when his name carried meaning. On the other end, Captain Warren breathed out slowly. "Where?" "Baltimore. Outside St. Mercy Hospital." Wearing his working collar. There was a transport tag on him from a private handler. Harbor Ridge Canine Logistics. The captain's voice hardened. Not loud, never loud, but sharpened by old command. "Say that name again." Isaiah did. Captain Warren repeated it back, lower, as if committing it to a place inside him reserved for unfinished business. That company handled overflow, recovery, and retirement transfers after the Kandahar incident, he said. Temporary contract. Short window. Too many animals, too much confusion. Isaiah's hand tightened gently around Ghost's paw. "They marked him no claimant confirmed. Because you were listed wrong. Presumed deceased." The words came out flat, but they struck anyway. Ghost lifted his head, sensing the change in the man's breathing. Isaiah rubbed behind his ear. "I was in a recovery center for months. Different name entry. Different state. No family contact. Nobody connected the files." Captain Warren was quiet for a long moment. "Cole, listen to me. That was not your failure." Isaiah looked down at Marcus Reed's folded message on the counter, sealed now in a clean sleeve Emily had found. "Forgive yourself." 2 words easier to read than to obey. "It felt like mine," he said. Before the captain could answer, Ghost shifted under the blanket. It was small at first, a tremor through his shoulders, then a sudden effort to rise. Dr. Brooks moved quickly, but Isaiah was faster, placing both hands steady against Ghost's chest. "Easy, boy." Ghost did not relax. His eyes had fixed on the clinic window, where a white van had rolled slowly past the curb, its side panel blank except for a faded blue stripe. Nothing about it should have mattered. But Ghost remembered something in the engine sound, or the smell drifting through the cracked door, or the pattern of tires over wet pavement. His breathing quickened. Not panic. Recognition. A warning without noise. Emily looked outside. The van continued down the street and turned the corner. Dr. Brooks reached for the window blinds, lowering them halfway. "Could be coincidence," he said, but his voice did not believe it. Isaiah kept his hand on Ghost's chest until the dog's breathing eased. Then he spoke into the phone again, softer now, steadier. "Captain, I need the original retirement chain. Every transfer. Every name." "You will have it," Warren said. "And Cole." "Yes, sir. Do not let anyone take that dog out of your sight." Isaiah looked at Ghost, who had sunk back against the blanket but kept one amber eye open, watching the window like a sentry who had served too long to dismiss a shadow. "No, sir," Isaiah said. "Not this time." The call ended. The clinic seemed smaller afterward, as if the walls themselves understood that Ghost had not simply wandered through rain to be rescued. He had carried a message, a record, and now maybe a warning. Emily moved beside Isaiah and placed the sealed collar seam, the transport label, Marcus Reed's message, and the broken dog tag into separate clear sleeves. Her hands were steady, but her face had gone pale with the seriousness of what they now held. "This is not just about getting him home," she said. Isaiah nodded. No. Ghost's paw pressed once against his hand, weak but certain. Outside, morning traffic thickened on the damp Baltimore street. Sunlight finally broke through the clouds, touching the clinic window in a thin gold line. Isaiah leaned close to Ghost and gave the old command, not sharp, not military, but intimate, spoken like a prayer between 2 survivors. "Guard me." Ghost opened both eyes. He could not stand yet. He could not bark. But he placed his paw over Isaiah's wrist and held it there. And in that small pressure was everything the morning needed to know. The mission was not over. It had only changed shape. By 8:30 that morning, Baltimore had begun to shine in that washed-clean way cities sometimes do after a hard rain. The sidewalks outside Dr. Nathan Brooks's clinic glimmered beneath a pale sun, and the gutters carried thin streams of water past coffee shops, bus stops, and parked cars still beaded with silver drops. Inside the examination room, Ghost slept for the first time without fighting it. His white fur had dried into soft, uneven waves, no longer plastered to his ribs, and the heated blanket rose and fell with each steady breath. Isaiah Cole sat beside him, unmoving except for his thumb brushing gently over the dog's paw. He looked tired in the early light, his face marked by a sleepless night and 3 years of carrying blame like a second spine, but something in him had shifted. Not healed. Not yet. Healing was not lightning. It was weather. It came in slow, quiet changes, like a dog finally sleeping because the right hand was near. Emily Harper stood at the counter while Dr. Brooks printed copies of every note they had gathered. The transfer label, the photograph of Ghost's collar, the hidden seam, Marcus Reed's message, the broken dog tag, the timestamp from St. Mercy Hospital's ambulance bay, and the initial exam report confirming that Ghost had been found cold, exhausted, and without a handler. Captain Miles Warren had sent the first set of records within the hour, just as he promised. They arrived in pieces, scanned forms from old databases, retirement transfer sheets, casualty corrections, contractor intake logs, and one line that made Isaiah go silent again. K9 Ghost, White German Shepherd, assigned handler staff Sergeant Isaiah Cole, claimant status unresolved due to personnel record error. Unresolved. That was the word people used when they did not want to say forgotten. Isaiah read it twice, then folded the paper carefully and set it beside Marcus's message. Ghost opened one eye, as if feeling the weight in the room, and Isaiah leaned closer. "I know," he whispered, "but we are here now." At 9:12, Captain Warren called again. This time his voice carried motion behind it. Car engine, turn signal, the faint rustle of papers. "Cole, I spoke with Veterans Affairs Liaison and a Marine Working Dog Retirement Advocate. Harbor Ridge is already under review for mishandled transfers. Your case gives them what they did not have." Isaiah looked at the clear sleeves lined on the counter. "Proof. Proof," Warren said, "and a living witness with better loyalty than most men I have met." Isaiah glanced at Ghost, and for the first time that morning, the corner of his mouth lifted. Just barely. He always was hard to ignore. Emily felt the smallest warmth move through the room. Not joy exactly. Something quieter. The first sign of a door opening. Dr. Brooks finished checking Ghost's fluids and removed the line with gentle hands. "He needs rest, a clean diet, follow-up care, and a calm home," he said. "No stress. No long walks yet. Maybe 5 minutes outside at a time for the first few days. Keep him warm. Keep him close." Isaiah nodded at every instruction like he was receiving. "Mission orders. I can do that." Dr. Brooks studied him. "I know you can, but I'm going to say this anyway. He is not the only one who needs rest." Isaiah did not answer. Ghost did it for him. The dog lifted his paw and set it against Isaiah's wrist, the same steady pressure from before, reminding him that command and care could go both ways. Emily turned her face slightly toward the window so no one would see how hard that small gesture hit her. An hour later, the official release form lay on the counter. Dr. Brooks had written Isaiah's name clearly as responsible guardian, not claimant, not handler, not temporary contact. Guardian. Isaiah stared at the word before signing. The pen moved slowly across the page. Staff Sergeant Isaiah Cole. When he finished, he stood for a moment with the pen still in his hand, as if the act had carried more meaning than paper could hold. "He is yours," Dr. Brooks said. Isaiah looked down at Ghost, who was now awake, head raised, amber eyes following him with that ancient, patient trust only dogs seem to know how to give. "No," Isaiah said softly. "I think I have always been his." Emily helped fold the blankets while Dr. Brooks brought out a wide, clean harness from the clinic supply room. It was plain black with reflective stitching, sturdy enough for a large dog, but gentle around the shoulders. Isaiah slid it over Ghost carefully. No one rushed. Ghost stood on unsteady legs, then steadied himself beside Isaiah. The old collar, now sealed in evidence, was placed in a small protective case. Around Ghost's neck, for the first time in years, there was nothing heavy, nothing hidden, nothing cutting into old memory. Only fur, only breath, only morning. When they stepped outside, the air smelled of rain, warmed pavement, and fresh bread from a bakery opening down the block. Traffic moved softly along the street. A bus side at the curb. A woman walking past with a paper grocery bag slowed when she saw the tall black Marine and the white German Shepherd beside him, both moving carefully, both looking as if they had survived a storm no one else could see. She smiled but said nothing, and that silence was kind. Isaiah paused at the edge of the sidewalk. Ghost leaned against his leg. For a second, the city disappeared, and there was only the two of them beneath the clear light after rain. Isaiah looked down. Ready to go home, Marine? Ghost's ears lifted. His tail moved once, slow and certain. Emily stood in the clinic doorway, arms folded against the morning chill, watching as Isaiah opened the passenger door of his old dark blue truck and lifted Ghost with both arms, careful, reverent, as though carrying a promise returned from the edge of the world. Before Isaiah climbed in, he turned back toward her. No speech came, no dramatic thanks, just a nod from one tired soul to another. Emily nodded back. The truck pulled away from the curb, tires whispering over wet pavement. Through the window, Ghost rested his head against Isaiah's shoulder, eyes half closed, no longer watching every door, no longer searching every face. He had been found. And Isaiah, driving toward the first morning that did not feel entirely like punishment, rested one hand lightly near the dog's paw. Some stories do not end with applause.